Namaste, my brothers and sisters. Welcome to the Circle of Wisdom. My name is Christopher Wotecki. I am the host of Namaste Today on SoulGarden.tv, and joining me is Christopher Onefeather, the host of Vision, Dreams, and Insight on his television network, YouTube.com/Onefeather. How you doing this week, Master Onefeather?
I am doing wonderfully. This full moon, I thought, was really very sensual and definitely pulling us in that direction of looking more deeply into our feelings, into our emotional range. You know, that grand trine and fire, a lot of passion, I think was probably happening on an inner level, not so much in the exterior world. Definitely, I think people were feeling it deeply within.
Absolutely, and Master Onefeather is referring to the lunar eclipse. We had a total lunar eclipse this morning on the entire world, but it was visible in the United States, which isn't always the case. It was actually at 3:55 a.m. and as you can see from our little diagram here, it was at 15 degrees, which is very tranquil. Did you observe the moon at all today, or did you get to see it?
Well, I was out, sitting on the back porch as I usually do, watching it come up. One of the things that occurs during a full moon, this is just a little bit of trivia minutia here, but the full moon passage, on the day of the full moon, the sun exits at the same time as the moon enters. So on one horizon you have the sun descending, on the other horizon you have the moon ascending.
Hello, goodbye.
Yes, and that actually gets flipped when we have a new moon. So during the first few days of a new moon, you have to look up in the day sky in order to be able to identify the presence of the moon. Whereas when the moon is getting closer and closer to being full, you will observe it in the evening sky. So if you're out there stumbling around in the darkness looking for the new moon, you're probably not going to find it, because the new moon will be setting just as the sun rises. So an interesting flip-flop.
That's fascinating. And isn't it nice that we get to see the full moon? That the moon is full, it's in the sky. That's kind of clever of God. Thanks, God. So we had a total lunar eclipse during this day. It was at step 15, but I agree it was a very peaceful. Well, step 15 is about peace, but it was a very peaceful eclipse.
It was, in fact, and I think that, like I said, I think it was one of those moon passages where there was a lot of inner transformative energy going on, and I don't think people are fully aware of everything yet that has been transformed within their own consciousness. I think there was definitely a significant shift, and of course with the sun in Libra, it's all about balance, the scales, that sort of thing. So coming into communication with your personal self and working on resolution of some of the problems that you may have been feeling but even able to clearly identify.
I would say that's absolutely correct, and I think a lot of what we're clearing is ego stuff, which is due to Uranus and Aries. But I really feel that a lot of subconscious anger. A lot of my clients dealing with a lot of anger. I had that come up too, and a lot of clients too in the last, clients, friends, family, viewers, comments. This is a very sleepy full moon. Most of the time, full moons keep me up. This one knocked me out. I had like 3 naps in a 24-hour period. Really pulling us into something deep.
Well, and you also look at, the nature of a full moon. That's when the sun and moon are at extremis. They're at their farthest point of opposition, and so that would make sense. It is somewhat stressful on human consciousness, because we're being pulled in both directions. The conscious part of our mind is over here wanting to express and act out. The subconscious is trying to reveal itself, is struggling with things that have been buried for decades perhaps. So it is an interesting period of that extreme energy of like the two elements stretching like a rubber band between them.
Literally a tug-of-war, in my opinion, between your emotions on one side with the moon and wherever your heart is processing on the other side with the sun. And usually the issue reaches some sort of a dramatic climax in your life, and usually a lunar eclipse, in my experience, brings forth emotions that were literally eclipsed, emotions that you've been hiding and hiding and hiding for a long time. And I think a lot of these emotions for a lot of people is anger, has to do with injustices they feel. But on deeper thought though, these two eclipses, we also get a solar eclipse coming up here at the end of the month, which you're probably aware of. So this is kind of like the vacuum sucking out all the dust, and then the solar eclipse is a big boost of energy. But to me, these are the final touches of really Saturn in Scorpio, which we've been working on since 2012, of where we draw deep emotional boundaries and where these deep emotional boundaries end up defining us. So to me, a lot of this back and forth in Libra is kind of like, has been for a lot of people's personal stories, kind of like the last straw in some cases that break camel's back, or in some cases it's them saying, you know what, I've got it together, I'm okay.
Hmm. Well, and also it's interesting that you mentioned that final passage of Saturn, because Saturn is going to be highlighted with this coming new moon, because we've got the new moon going to renewal in early Scorpio, and it's going to be a very intense new moon process, and then we'll have the full moon in good old Taurus in about 4 weeks from now, which is going to be real interesting, because I think by then a lot of people will finally come to the realization that this is what they really want or desire in their lives. And Taurus is always a good sign for getting that grounding, turning the soil, planting the seeds, starting a new cycle of germination and growth.
Full moon in Taurus is technically the Halloween moon. I mean,
yes.
The Halloween moon in the sense of things are dying, but we feel good about it. You know what I mean? Like, we feel good about it because the moon's full in Taurus. And so, it's, yes, everything's dying, but we have this big harvest and we're going to eat. And I think you're right.
Well,
go ahead.
Well, it's just returning to the earth. It's that process of decay, degeneration, and preparation for the new cycle that comes when the sun actually arrives in Taurus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. It's the opposite. It literally is that opposite of Scorpio energy. And what's interesting is it's coming later. There's been years where the moon in Taurus is full in Taurus around Halloween, like by the nature of the wobbling. Now the moon is going to be full in Taurus in November, and I'm thinking years back when it was near Halloween. I'm trying to think back when the Halloween was when it was in Taurus, and I was feeling it. But now, literally, these two eclipses, these two energies, one with the lunar that we just had, is really the stage, and then, like you said, we have that new moon, and that new moon is exactly at 0 degrees Scorpio. That is a 0 degree new moon. As Saturn in Scorpio wraps up almost a 3-year journey in Scorpio, it's like we literally are redefining Scorpio, or rebooting at that moment. It's some sort of new day. That's what I feel.
Yeah, it definitely is going to be carrying that energy with it. The interesting thing also is going to be watching how as the sun progresses into Scorpio, how for that brief period there it's going to start to really amp up in its association with Pluto in Capricorn. There will be a nice tight sextile there. And then also we'll have Chiron and Neptune in Pisces that will be in trine. So all of those elements are really pulling us more deeply into our true identity, our spiritual identity, and I think that's really what autumn is about here for us this year.
Yeah, I think you're right. Spiritual identity is really it, in the sense that we have Saturn heading for Sagittarius soon, and I think you're absolutely right. I think actually we're going to see with this Mercury retrograde, one of the things that is coming. But I mute you. Yeah, no problem. I think we might see something really interesting come out of the woodwork. I would predict, just looking at all the planets and everything you just said, Master One Feather, the fact that we have this solar eclipse that happens right on 0 degrees Scorpio. So some sort of big line is drawn Mercury's retrograde, so some sort of secret's going to come out. And then Saturn goes into Sagittarius, which is Christmas Eve, ironically, which is really the birth of a new religion. So I feel like something's going to throw us into this phase of suddenly considering what our religion is, what we believe. Some probably world event will probably put us in that discussion. What do you think?
Well, I think it's probably pretty accurate. Hopefully it won't be the three Abrahamic religions stirring things up and making us crazy with infighting about their definition of God, which is something of a tradition with them. We've had 2,000 years of Christians, Jews, and Arabs going after each other all over the same God, which is kind of a pathetic way to approach divinity and to approach the whole concept of divine love. But maybe we are going to get an inch or two closer to actually resolving those differences that we're seeing in the Middle East, and perhaps even resolving some of the differences we're seeing in the situation between China and Tibet, and China and India, and spirituality globally. I think hopefully we'll be moving into the next stage.
I hope you're right. I feel like there's something brewing definitely in all those fronts. What's interesting about this time with us going into conflict with ISIS and all this stuff, it seems from our media perspective that it's no longer about God. It seems like it's purely political now.
Well, that is definitely the way they're trying to present it, because once you introduce the idea of God to the dialogue, then you have to start exploring the actual nature of God, and that really is not to the advantage of the established communities. So especially with the internet in place, 20 years ago we had such a poor line of communication globally that we couldn't really have dialogue about, well, my religion says God is love, and the guy on the other side of the globe says, well, that's what my religion says too. And all of a sudden there's this beginning of realization that there really isn't a lot of difference between the concepts of what God represents.
Do you really think it was about God, or do you think, I don't know if it was really about God. I have a feeling that we went running into some churches and we're like, did you hear what they said about your God? And I think we ran to the other side and said, did you hear what they said about the Lord Jesus Christ? And I feel like we just got forgetting the term, but we got the people who were less evolved or less educated to fight these wars about God. But really it's that we want a pipeline here or a territory there. Was it really, except for the Jews, in the desert in the very beginning, has it been really about God, or have we been manipulated by propaganda and whatnot?
Well, I think as soon as you institutionalize God, then it becomes a religion and is no longer a spiritual journey. But once again, I'll reiterate the fact that we have global communication amping up every day. I mean, each week we have some new gadget or gizmo or innovation in technology that unifies us even more. And within that process of unification, people talk, and all the chatter that's going on now about what God is or God is not, I think is starting to cause people to actually really dig deeply into their principles and into their sense of values, into their ethical character, and ask themselves, do I believe in God? And if I do believe in God, what does God represent to me? So there is a big change going on. How to gauge it is virtually impossible, but it definitely is in process.
I don't know. Like at the moment, unless there's a big tragedy, it's difficult to gauge. People tend to come around. I mean, as far as where spirituality is. When I talk to people, though, I don't know. When I talk to people, young people, everyone seems to have their heart kind of with God, and no one seems to really be. I don't really meet people who aren't a little spiritual. I mean, everyone seems to be fairly spiritual and decent to each other. I think a lot of these perceptions are media, not necessarily what I experience as my truth.
Exactly. The media is designed to market something to us.
Yeah, it
Even
really is. Yeah.
BBC. We used to go to BBC for uh, uh, some kind of real perspective on global events. But even BBC is, definitely got a lot of political agendas going too. So again, as soon as you get, that part of the process going, uh, then you really eliminate spirituality from the bigger picture.
Mm. Yeah, and this brings me to actually a little article I'm going to share, and then we'll say hi to our people that have joined our conversation here in a second. My little article that I found for today, let's see here, actually has to do with Twitter. I just want to applaud Twitter, and I'll read it real quickly. But Twitter on Tuesday, yesterday, filed suit against the FBI and the Justice Department seeking the ability to release detailed information on government surveillance of Twitter users. So basically, Twitter is suing the federal government for the right to tell the public what the federal government has been asking them to look at. But I have to applaud Twitter. This is the first internet company that actually has fought the law. They may lose, but they said here, this is interesting, in July of this year, Twitter received 2,000 requests for information on its users from the government, U.S. government, 40%, a 46% increase than the last year. But the cool thing there is just seeing technology. You're mentioning technology. It's like here's young money from technology, Twitter. And Twitter is one of the smaller. I mean, they're big. They're quite big, and they're always devalued. But everyone listens to Twitter. They're the gossip chain. But the cool thing is that here's technology throwing a buck in the system, like you mentioned. And I think that's right. I think that really is our saving force is the internet, Master Better.
Oh, absolutely. And, the internet gave us one of my favorites, which was when Wikimedia released all of the U.S. government papers, all of the documentation a couple of years back about what was really going on, and threw the government into a panic. And the real content of 99.9% of what was released was, in essence, gibberish. There was probably a 0.5% of information there that had any kind of real impact for us. But the government loves to, go into this frenzy and create a panic about them and us, and they're going to kill us all, and I think again the internet is causing us to get over being stampeded in those directions, and
Yeah, it is definitely
realize that
neutralizing. Yeah.
exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was looking at some documentaries, working on stuff over the weekend, and a lot of stuff's coming out now about the CIA ops during the Iran-Contra affairs of Reagan in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
And as crazy as this sounds, I can't even believe this is on TV because it goes on TV, no one says anything about it. But what this program was saying was basically that we were selling arms to these Contras. But then we were actually bringing the money in from the arms through cocaine. We
Right.
were actually bringing it in through cocaine, and I guess selling the cocaine to our own people for profit. Like,
Right, and see, that was a pattern that was picked up and based on, unfortunately, and this, reiterates the idea that both sides, the Republicans and the Democrats, are equally up to their arms in the crap that's being tossed around.
yeah,
But
they're both.
back in the midst of the Vietnam War, there is a similar series of operations that went on where there was a huge amount of money that was brought into this country via the heroin fields in Cambodia and Thailand. See,
Okay.
so this was nothing new. This was an old pattern that we had seen previously, and trying to document that, of course, is difficult. But there is that one great little movie with what's his name, Mel Gibson, called Air America, and if you go down and rent that movie or purchase it or whatever, you will be enchanted by the movie itself. But it's all based on actual fact. It's not a flight of fancy. It is factual.
It's basically our military selling drugs.
Yeah, basically, and and capitalism in its ugliest form, because these little dictators from Asia, and all dictators are essentially the same. It's all self-aggrandization, and ultimately the primary dictator ends up, who is a general, he ends up in this country being able to buy a Travelodge motel in Southern California, which is his big dream. That's why he's selling and running all this contraband heroin out of the country, is so he can eventually land in America and own a Travelodge motel.
That's every dictator's dream, Master One Feather?
Well, I think that, it's to have your own little personal empire, no matter how you define that empire.
Right.
Ultimately, the outcome is, to have control over some kind of a capitalistic machine that is going to keep you wealthy and happy, and also give you that little bit of flex every once in a while when you need to flex your muscles and terrorize the bellhops or whatever.
Right. Yes. Bellhops. Yeah, now it's there's definitely room service going on. What made me really sad about the whole Nicaragua arms stuff was that at home, this is what breaks my heart. I don't know how to deal with this kind of stuff. At home, the Bush family is pushing war on drugs. Nancy's pushing just say no, and probably knowingly being the #1 smuggler of cocaine. I don't think Reagan was. But what makes me sick is that so many people who are doing cocaine and stuff on the streets and stuff get these really heavy jail sentences, and they're in jail for all this time, and it's like, and that's from, why are we policing cocaine? Why is there a war on drugs if we're making money on it? That's just really sad. Yeah, I mean, they're making money on it. So I guess actually it's probably the war makes it more valuable on the streets, as I'm hitting here talking out loud to myself.
Yeah.
War on drugs,
Absolutely.
price goes up. You actually can inflate the market by making it riskier, quote, quote. So we have some people joining us today. We have Lisa, Mary, and Mish. Is that how you pronounce it? Cool. Did you ladies want to step in and say anything? Welcome to Circle of Wisdom. How are you? Thank you for joining us.
I wanted to say, do you think with the lunar eclipse, these people that are at war that just want to, it's like they want to show USA that we can cut people's heads off and do this, and we'll show you. USA comes back and says, well, we'll show you, we're going to go there and drop some bombs and whatever. That the individual person out there feels like their hands are tied because the people, the little man is so under control that they don't have a choice. They're going to do what the big guy says no matter how they feel. And I'm hoping the lunar eclipse will let people know a day at a time that they have to think about things and make their own decisions, and maybe at some point it'll get to these muckety mucks that think they're hot shit.
I don't know. I think the lunar eclipse. I think anyone caught in that drama of actual warfare is going to see a significant change of something from the eclipse. Whatever the war is, I think it'll be changed to a different degree, and I think it has to do with people changing in their hearts what they want or don't want. With this Uranus too, what's worth fighting for and not fighting for. But I often think about, like, watching history. Rome, for instance. If you were a Roman and lived in central Rome, well, your emperors were off raping, pillaging, and burning the entire earth, bringing back treasure for Rome. Did the average Roman citizen complain? Hell no. You know what I mean? And now it's like, we've got some sort of weird war propaganda machine that creates alleged terrorism as an excuse to go in and create oil pipelines. And as a quote, as the United States being the modern Rome, I just feel like as a citizen, like, I just have to watch this go down, and whatever evil emperor is at the top of this is going to probably end up crashing into something, if that's the case. But But it
I hope
seems like
so.
some people, it seems like we're all involved in this world where it's like all this always goes on. I also always think, too, like, well, what if we were an Aborigine living in the middle of a Brazilian rainforest? We didn't have TV, and we never will have TV. We wouldn't even know what was going on, and your entire life would be what it was. And that's possible, too. So we're in an interesting time. I'm just going off in philosophy here. You want to step in, Master One Feather, and save me here?
Well, I think one of the things we have to look at is, again, through communication, through media and the internet, we are discovering a lot of personal stories that are being shared between people about significant events like this particular eclipse. And for me, um, I'll plug my YouTube channel here one more time. I posted a video this morning. It's episode 13 of my Visions, Dreams, and Insights. And I think it really gives people an excellent um, sense of the bigger picture as to what really the potential behind this moon passage was. And in that video, I was dialoguing about how, on a personal level, looking at the polarization, the sun and the moon. Okay, you're at a point where you're out there in the world and you're like the moon. You're reflecting that presence of the sun, that the glory, I guess you could say, of the sun, the power, the illumination of the sun. And all of a sudden there's an eclipse and there's a shadow that passes across. And what does the shadow actually mean? For me, I immediately looped into the idea of a lot of crap from the past comes up and creates shadows in our lives. We are addicted to our guilt, to our shame, to our sorrow, to our frustration, to our anger. And at the same time, we're unable to get in contact with ourselves on the essential level, on the basic level, our fundamental nature, enough to actually accept or receive forgiveness. So we walk around with these buried elements within the moon side of the whole thing, within the subconscious. And the true force of an eclipse like this, I think, is to cause us to question why it is that we are still carrying baggage from 5 decades ago or 3 decades ago, from guilt from an incident that occurred when we were 13 years old. And the absolute outcome of all of this is that we can, in fact, gain the forgiveness that will help us to release the burden of these things. But in order for there to be forgiveness, and this is a paradox of this realm, you always have to give in order to get. So if you want to get forgiveness, you have to give forgiveness to everybody out there, no matter what the circumstances were. You have to work your way into that position where you can forgive and release all of those around you. And as that process is acted out, you attain your own higher level of existence. You lighten the load, you get rid of the burdens, and you get to that higher plateau where you've released and forgiven yourself in the same process. And that's what I think a lot of the eclipses are a constant reminder of. And this one I think was especially powerful because we had some very significant passages. We had Mars in the spin as the moon was progressing. We had that trine lining up, so the moon enters Aries, it trines Mars, then it trines Jupiter, and Jupiter is the great expander. Jupiter is getting all this stuff out to extremis, and then Uranus is in the middle of the spin, and a lot of times things suddenly occur where we do something unconsciously because we're running a subconscious program, and that program is acting out on guilt from some incident that we contributed to that created chaos in somebody else's life. So all of these elements are in the spin. It's almost like looking at the solar system with all these planets moving around. Well, that's the interior world that we inhabit at all times. We've got all this movement going on. And we have to calm the situation. and everybody is stunned and quiet. So how
Well, I
cool
think
was that?
well, there at the very end there, the spinning planets. I didn't know if it was just me or it was your connection or all of us but we lost you for 1 second there. So
Ah,
my standard way of operating of that is just to fake it and keep going, keep doing this for a minute. So we did hear the very end of it, but we heard most of it. But the truth is that everything in the outer verse that's spinning around and crazy is really a representation of what's going on inside of us. And I have to agree with you. I think with a lot of my clients, my personal readings and stuff, a lot of what seemed to be let go, I think it's just the moon crossing Uranus right before and in Aries and Uranus in Aries. A lot of it's anger. A lot of people are getting rid of anger, I'm finding, as far as what they found themselves holding on to. And I think it's a surprise a lot of times when people. The other thing I want to point out too is it's like what really sucks is that why is it that God, why don't we get rid of our past anger and stuff while we're in joy, while we're on our path to success? You always got to clear out all the dirty dishes and shit before anything good happens. It's not like we forget or let go of our past due to joy. You know what I mean? Like, but you know what I'm saying? It just always seems like the lesson is a little bit spiritual harder always, you know? So we're at
yes,
the,
and one of the things, Christopher, about anger, anger is like a peach. The pulpy fruit around the pit is the anger. But when you get to the core of the situation, when you look to the center, that hard, solid pit that is there in the center, that's fear. The reason people have anger is because on a much deeper level, they have fear. They have a fear of being attacked. They have a fear of, you know, ultimately it all reduces down to that ultimate fear, which is that we've been brainwashed into the idea that God is a vengeful God and he's going to kick our ass when he finally catches up with us. So, and that's a core fear that is part of the human experience. And we have to work our way through first the anger to get to the realization, oh, beneath this anger, there was a huge amount of fear. And the way I sheltered myself from experiencing that fear was the rage that I was producing.
hmm. So you're thinking about if it's fear. Yeah, I think if you boil super down to it, for me there was a lot of anger from just I don't know. I mean, I think it's just injustice. I don't know what it is. I think it's it's injustice. It's also I was realizing that injustice in the perspective of an earthly perspective. It's like we have an injustice that's done to us, but that injustice is based on where we are at that time and what justice is at that time. But then we react to that injustice, protect the next life, and now we're reacting to the first life's injustice, even though now we're dealing with new definitions of injustice and new vantage points. So I realized that, for me, the forgiving, putting down the anger or whatever, I can't say it's because I want to do the spiritual right thing. It was because I wanted it over.
Well, yeah, and being at peace is the whole point of all of this, and peace is the one thing that we are guaranteed when we approach that higher level of living in spirit, to be inspired at all times. But again, Christopher, you're pointing out the idea here that what makes you angry is injustice. But if you look a little bit deeper into that, I think that on the next level down, you have a fear of injustice being performed against you. So that fear creates, the next level, the anger, and then you become reactionary, and then you want to get rid of all injustice everywhere. So, again, we have to look at life as our personal journey. It's the core element within us that is motivating us. And the core element of the fundamental human animal is predicated on fight or flight. So we've got two different aspects of reaction to fear, fight or flight.
Yes, I would agree with that. As a basic animalistic. And that never goes away, really.
No, that's
I
what
mean,
we
I
have.
think that you have to sit there and talk yourself not into fighting or flighting all the time. I think the president giving a speech when someone pisses him off fights his inner child wants to fight or flight. You know, that's kind of built into us. And that's, I think it's necessary for us as well. I think for myself, I agree with you. It probably does come down to fear at the very end of the day. But the part that I'm disarming, by this point, I don't feel the fear. I just feel anger. And there may be fear there, but like, how do you, in that moment, the fear? Let's put it this way: if it's brought to you, and the truth is, if you analyze it, like you analyze whenever there's an injustice, and you analyze to yourself, okay, well, if this happens again, well, there's no fear there, wouldn't you say? Like, even though you might be afraid of it happening again, the truth is, when you come across that, most of the time, what the fear is of the unknown. Once you're in front of it, you won't be afraid. You'll deal with it differently this time. So my point is, in releasing of anger and stuff for myself, to me, it had to just be, at the end of the day, it just comes down, like, the only reason I could get myself to, it was so tiring to be angry and cause so much energy and waste of time, was the only reason I could put it down, in my opinion, at the end. Versus, but it wasn't, I have to say, I wasn't necessarily feeling like I was running from fear at the time. I'm just trying to help people go through this transition. I think what's happening is like, wherever you were born, basically, this is the second time Saturn has come to Scorpio in our lifetime. It was in Scorpio 30 years ago. And I think a lot of all of this that people, like I said in the beginning of this show, that are dealing with the two eclipses is removing, like you said, sir, that emotional issues that are at the foundation of what's bugging us. But the Saturn and Scorpio side of it is, this is what prevents us from feeling secure or not secure on Earth, period. Our entire sense of security really is being poured right now, whether people are aware of it or not. And these little decisions to find yourself or not find yourself in the situation, or where you find yourself, really is building a new sense of security. And the last time the world built this sense of security was during the Cold War. So if my point is like facing the fears and facing the subconscious emotions that we're dealing with. I believe that what's really going on at a deep lower level is that we are reestablishing our sense of safety or not safety with Saturn and Scorpio. That people are going to come out with a sense of feeling safe in the world or not feeling safe in the world here in the next few months. And this eclipse is one of those things with yourself that determine that big picture. And I actually had muted Lisa, and I'll bring you back, Lisa. Did you want to say something? Lisa?
Yes, I did. Yep.
Go ahead, dear. Step in.
With the whole thing about dealing with your own personal fears and everything going on right now, I have found that addressing them and finding some way to come to peace with it, because first you can only change yourself, and when you raise your own vibration, it's contagious. Yeah. And I've seen friends around me who are going through all sorts of trials and tribulations, and then you've got what's going on with the government and worldwide and the media, and you're inundated by so much BS and fear-mongering that the fight or flight within us tends to ramp up. And I've learned earlier this year that living in that state really does damage to your body and your energy levels. And so I'm in the process of correcting that now. But being able to come to grips with what's going on and to know that the best thing I can do for the world is to raise my own energy levels, and hopefully it rubs off on the people around me and anybody else who I come in contact with, and supporting those who are also going through it.
How much of your fight or flight was kind of tied to a rush?
To a rush?
Yeah, I just mean, like, I think that, I mean, as I look back at my fight or flight that I'm putting down too, I realized that, like, especially in my 20s, it was quite a, I was actually subconsciously using that game to keep myself moving.
No, I found it to be more obsessive.
Mm.
And it just would take me down and consume my thoughts and depression. Being a Libra uh, and justice and seeing so much injustice that it was consuming me. But I've had the fight or flight in me since I was a child, actually lifetimes before that. And to get it to a point now to say, no, you can't do this to me anymore.
You
It's
talking to
freeing.
yourself there?
Yes. No, you can't do this anymore.
Right.
It makes for a better life, and I feel calmer, and I can communicate better because I'm not having this fear wrap around me and strangle me.
Mm. Yeah, I think
So,
it is the fear. I definitely agree. We get so caught up in reacting to the fear that I think we forget it's
I, and I found that, yeah, I'm still aware of what's going on, but I do not um, follow it so closely anymore. I am always politically active, but I'm finding it to be better to be more spiritually active and to share those insights with people and help them to realize that all of us out there on the internet, worldwide, there are so many people who want to find hope and a way to connect, and that's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And, something's got to give. Like you said, something big is coming up.
Something has to give. I'm pretty sure. I
Yeah.
just, as a citizen, sit here and go, okay, like, and I'm not trying to be extreme, but I think we're much better at hiding stuff than we used to be because the public is more sophisticated than it used to be. But at what point in World War II did the average citizen go, "What's with the stars?" Like at what point I felt like, but I think something will give before that happens, and I think you're right. In the meantime, our job is to just stay ourselves.
Yep. Remain calm and carry on.
Yeah, that was the saying in World War II for Great Britain, was it not? Yeah.
Something like that.
As a Libra, did you have a lot of anger, Lisa?
Did I have a lot of anger? Oh,
Yeah.
I had massive anger. Massive. And, I mean, considering the fact that I started having an ulcer when I was about 5.
Oh.
Yeah. And, my parents and picking up their habits of dealing with anger, not good. So everything that I've been doing for about the past 4 years has been, in some ways, to deal with this anger and to get rid of it, or at least to diffuse it. And if it's also coming from past lives, I respect it, learn from it, but get out of the way. I don't need you anymore. I've learned the lessons, but there has to be a better way. And the more I find my spirituality and gifts I've been given, the better I feel. So it's this whole reemergence, this rebirth. Also, honoring the child within has been a major importance to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if more people did that, I mean, weren't we kinder in some ways when we were in kindergarten?
Was I?
Yeah. Were any of us? I know I was. I was a gentler soul when I was in kindergarten, in comparison to by the time I was in college.
Mm.
Or even as a parent or an adult. It's.
Well, that's one of the things I discovered here. I think with Uranus and Aries and what this eclipse is about, this tug of war between Aries and Libra, has to do with the personal relationship to ourself. And when I look back as a kid, I was swallowing my anger then. I was born swallowing it. I was born taking one for the team. I was born being quiet for everyone else. Like, so I didn't even recognize my anger until my late 30s. I was just like,
better late than never.
well, and it came up, and people are like, "What's wrong with you?" And I'm like, "I don't know." I don't know why. But as I did my past life stuff, I realized, oh, I'm really pissed at Earth. It was more than this life was taking up. But I'm grateful for that now, and now I just want to have sit by the pool and watch these Earth things, see what happens.
Yeah, I find life is better when you can release that anger, and a person can only do so much. I have friends who are so embroiled in trying to get everybody to understand what is going on politically, and I'm watching their lives and their health deteriorate, and mine was doing that, and so I just pulled it back and said, stop. Be very selective. If you're going to post something political, try to be what I call non-denominational on political stuff. Make sure that it's something that the masses, for the most part, can understand and any side can grab onto. To bring some unity together, bring people together, and help them raise their vibration and their energy and their understanding and compassion. I don't know. That's the one way I see that. I can help. That maybe others can help.
Yeah, no, I definitely see that. That definitely comes out too when there's a problem. It'll be interesting to see how things unfold. I think we're going to actually have some new information come to the forefront. I would imagine that by Christmas, everyone is looking at this Earth a little bit differently. Just as an astrological prediction, and we'll see what comes out in the next 2 weeks in this retrograde.
Oh yeah, it's going to be interesting. I guarantee it.
So, do you have any tips for putting down anger, Miss Libra? What did you say to yourself?
Go to your inner child,
mm-hmm.
and let that inner child, just like you've taught us. It's okay.
That's
you don't have to deal with this right now. Just nurture yourself. Find, in my mind, I have this wonderful place that I go, and just do things. If I need to sleep, I sleep.
Yeah.
If I need to go outside and hug a tree, I go do that. Except in northern Michigan, trying to go outside barefoot in the winter might be a little problem.
They say that, yeah. I find that my inner child wanted an advocate. And in most cases, just by having a baby on its side, it's able to disarm. But it gets rearmed real quick.
Yeah. I'm
constantly
finding that those rearming times for me have grown further and further apart. But I also have somebody in my life who can help me get out when I start getting one of those bad funks and you're stuck.
People help. Absolutely does. Well, thank you, Lisa, for sharing. We appreciate you showed up and gave us your insight. Master One Feather, I wanted to throw it by you one more time if you had any more wrap-ups on anger and whatnot. We actually are just about out of time here, so.
Yeah, I think, one of the things that we've got going on is we've got this loop. There we go.
Yeah, there we go. I just
that way I'm not being directed outwards on others. But a lot of our anger is our frustration with ourselves and with our frustration with failure in our lives. And so that loops us all the way back into what I was talking about originally, which is the idea of forgiveness. If you use forgiveness as the foundation for your life, and really work to forgive others and to forgive yourself, I think you'll observe a diminishing of anger, and I think that you will find the core fears that have silence, working with meditation. Even if you're not able to fully, truly meditate in the truest sense, chilling, just relaxing. Put on some music if necessary.